Welcome to the deep dive. This is going to be one of those sessions, I think, where we start out thinking we're tackling a very specific, almost bureaucratic policy issue.
Right, something like a visa fee or a new regulation.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden, that discussion it expands outward. And before you know it, we're talking about the end of global scarcity, the future of industrialized intelligence.
And somehow the convergence of ancient religious prophecy with modern technological utopianism.
It's a massive journey. And we've got a stack of sources here that make some, truly audacious claims.
It is a phenomenal stack of sources, and they really do create a clear arc. We begin, just as you said, with a very, very pointed critique of the current state of U.S. immigration policy.
Specifically, the H1B visa crisis.
Yes, the H1B crisis. But what's interesting is how quickly the material moves beyond just, criticizing the immediate failure. It starts to analyze the profound macroeconomic fallout.
What happens when a superpower starts actively discouraging the movement of high-value intelligence?
That's the question. Structurally, what does that do to the global economy?
The narrative spine here is just incredible to follow. We start really grounded in these specific, highly charged, immediate details.
Things you can really picture.
Yeah, like the chaos caused by visa appointments being pushed out for years, or this specter of a proposed, $100,000 fee for one petition.
It's a staggering number.
And then from there, we just dramatically pivot. We start covering the geopolitical strategic alternatives that are being engineered right now by other nations.
The counter-moves.
The counter-moves, the rise of what the sources call industrialized knowledge work, and then eventually we have to grapple with this completely unexpected convergence.
It feels like it comes out of left field, but the sources build the case.
They do. Suddenly, thousands of years of prophetic vision start to feel achievable through things like AI and biotech.
And that's precisely the mission for this deep dive. Our source material frames the core issue with startling clarity. This rising anti-immigrant rhetoric, it's not a defense mechanism. It's a self-inflicted decline in the U.S. By actively targeting skilled immigration, particularly the reliance on professionals from India and Asia, America, it's mistaking the very engine of its economic strength.
Its ability to attract the best talent.
For a threat that has to be purged. It's a fundamental misreading of its own success.
And what we need to trace today for you is the logical and, the economic consequences of that policy failure.
Yeah.
If the U.S. continues down this path of friction and unpredictability, what are the concrete results of offshoring intelligence?
And I think more fascinatingly, what are the audacious counter-strategies that rival nations, particularly India, are considering right now to capitalize on this massive U.S. fumble?
Exactly.
So we'll analyze the policy breakdown, we'll map out the architectural response, which means we have to define concepts like the Knowledge Foxconn and the Accelerator City, and then finally,
And connect it all back.
we connect this entire economic analysis to that profound, millennia-old concept of the age of abundance, and show how economic necessity and strategic ambition might be kind of inadvertently fulfilling an ancient vision.
It's a lot to cover. Let's unpack this with the depth it deserves.
Okay, so let's start with the immediate crisis the sources flag. The current hostility toward H1B visa holders, and we're talking, predominantly highly skilled professionals from India, is defined as much more than a typical immigration spat.
It really is. Our sources call it a stress test of America's commitment to meritocracy, innovation, and global leadership.
And the conclusion is pretty stark, isn't it? The system is failing that test.
It's failing, and the reason it's failing is because of a complete erosion of predictability.
Yeah.
Trust in the system is collapsing.
And that erosion of trust has created what the sources vividly label a climate of fear, not law.
That phrase is so important. The irony here is critical to grasp because it really speaks to the core fragility of the system.
Meaning the legal status might be sound on paper. Exactly. On paper, legally, H1B holders retain their travel rights. They can go home to visit family, they can travel for work, but practically, that legal assurance is, it's effectively nullified by the sheer uncertainty.
And this isn't some abstract fear. We're seeing massive global companies, the pillars of the American economy like Microsoft, Apple, Google, reportedly advising their foreign employees to immediately avoid international travel.
Or if they're already abroad, to get back to the U.S. right now.
So why are these incredibly sophisticated corporate machines reacting this way? What's driving that panic?
They're reacting to risk intolerance. It's driven by a complete lack of faith in the stability of the policy framework. They're afraid that a new, sudden, unpredictable policy shift could happen at any moment.
Like a presidential executive order or a new fee?
Or just a sudden, unexplained administrative bottleneck, and the result is that those workers could be stranded abroad, just unable to return to their jobs.
The sources draw a powerful parallel here.
They do. They compare it to the preemptive mobility freezes that firms instituted during the early COVID-19 pandemic.
That's a great comparison.
It is, because they weren't reacting to a specific law that had been passed. They were reacting to catastrophic uncertainty. And that kind of instability, it just poisons the well for attracting and retaining the world's most mobile, high-value talent.
And the practical consequences for the individuals involved they're just crushing. We aren't talking about marginal disruptions.
No, not at all. We're seeing thousands of skilled workers, many of them just visiting family in India or elsewhere, finding themselves caught in this severe immigration limbo.
So let's talk about the timeline. This is what really stood out to me.
The human timeline involved is genuinely shocking, and this is where the policy discussion really hits home. Visa appointments for these skilled professionals, which are often necessary for renewals or stamping, have been just summarily canceled.
And then rescheduled when?
And then rescheduled, in some documented cases, as far out as the end of 2027.
2027. I mean, just think about that for a moment.
It's hard to even process. That timeline doesn't just represent an inconvenience. It puts entire careers, multi-year mortgages, their children's education plans, and family stability. It puts it all effectively on pause.
For years.
For years. The source material really emphasizes that for a nation that claims to operate under the rule of law, this casual, bureaucratic erosion of predictability is deeply, deeply corrosive.
It sends a message, doesn't it?
It signals to high-value talent globally that their entire professional life can be arbitrarily suspended by administrative chaos.
It makes that professional contract between the country and the talent completely unreliable. Why would you commit your life, your career, your family to a country where a simple administrative backlog can hold your entire future hostage until 2027?
That is the exact question every single skilled professional is asking right now. And the companies employing them are asking a different question.
Which is?
Why rely on a talent pipeline that can be frozen solid for 3 or 4 years? The policy itself creates this powerful, unavoidable incentive to look elsewhere.
Now, this climate of fear isn't just a result of bureaucracy. It's being fueled by some very specific and, frankly, financially disruptive policy proposals. Let's look at what the sources call the financial trigger.
The proposed $100,000 fee for new H1B petitions.
$100,000 per person.
Per application. This proposal, which was slated to potentially take effect in late 2025, is just a catastrophic price signal to the entire innovation ecosystem.
I mean, we have to look at how that fundamentally changes the ROI calculation, right?
Yeah.
Especially for venture capital firms and startups.
Absolutely. If you're a startup and you're trying to hire, say, 5 hyper-specialized AI engineers, that's immediately $500,000 of administrative overhead.
Before they've written a single line of code.
Exactly. It significantly raises the bar for hiring talent that is already incredibly scarce. Now, it might not deter the Googles and Apples of the world.
No, they could absorb that.
But it absolutely throttles the mid-sized companies and the innovative startups that are, the real drivers of economic dynamism.
And the damage isn't even waiting for the policy to be implemented.
No, the damage is being done today. The mere proposal of this fee has already generated, according to the sources, emergency memos from employers and prompted these frantic attempts by foreign workers to get back to U.S. soil.
Because they're fearful they'll be permanently locked out if the policy goes into effect while they're away.
It's creating paralysis in the talent pipeline. It's making critical hiring decisions impossible right now.
And then compounding that financial toxicity is what the sources call the social trigger.
The policy uncertainty has coincided with a very dangerous, sharp rise in anti-Indian sentiment online.
What does that look like?
Monitoring groups cited by our sources are reporting a dramatic surge in hate speech. This includes racial slurs and, in some cases, explicit threats of violence targeted specifically at Indian professionals who are associated with the H1B visa.
So it creates this fundamentally toxic environment that goes way beyond just economic policy. The fear is compounded by feeling unwelcome and even unsafe.
It is, but we have to address the core justification that's often used for these restrictions, which is the jobs myth.
The idea that restricting these visas protects domestic workers.
That's the premise. And our sources, which are armed with data, unequivocally counter this.
So what does the data actually say?
Well, the data shows that H-1B holders are overwhelmingly filling roles that have persistent, measurable talent shortages.
And these are mainly in advanced STEM fields.
Primarily, AI research, specialized biotech, advanced fintech algorithms, material science. These are not generalist jobs that anyone can do. They are highly, highly specialized.
We also have to acknowledge the sheer demographic reality that's driving this. Asians account for, what, nearly 90% of H-1B approvals?
That's right. And Indian professionals alone comprise roughly 70% of that total. So these are not interchangeable workers. They are specialized talent pools filling very specific gaps in the U.S. economy.
So this is the critical distinction the sources make. The core function of foreign-born workers in this context is not crowding out domestic talent.
It's amplifying it.
Amplifying it. How?
The sources use the analogy of a high-value multiplier. Think of it this way. If a domestic company hires one foreign-born AI expert, that expert doesn't just take one job. They might enable the company to launch a completely new, scalable product line,
Which then requires...
which immediately requires 20 domestic sales, marketing, support, and logistics staff. They allow teams and entire industries to scale much faster than they could otherwise.
So curtailing this flow isn't an economic defense at all.
It is a strategic weakening of U.S. competitiveness. You are actively reducing the capacity for that economic multiplier effect to even occur.
And the sources really drive home the point that this damage has become intensely personal and, in some cases, openly racial.
They do. They point to the online harassment faced by prominent conservative pro-business figures like Vivek Ramaswamy, who is running for office.
And that's a key observation, isn't it? It shows the depth of the animosity.
It really does. Ramaswamy's own reported experience of having to step back from personal social media engagement because of the level of abuse he was getting. It shows that this hostility transcends political alignment or economic success.
So it's undermining the narrative that the anti-H1B movement is truly about jobs rather than identity.
Exactly. If the animosity targets immigrants, regardless of their political identity or, their adherence to the American success story, it reveals itself as something far more toxic than simple labor protection.
The message that gets received by these high-skilled immigrants is, even if you achieve the American dream, even if you align with the dominant political narrative, you are still a target, simply because of your origin.
And that kind of structural alienation has enormous geopolitical implications.
Especially concerning U.S.-India relations.
This is a matter of grand strategy. The partnership between the world's oldest and largest democracies is absolutely critical for managing global stability.
We're talking about cooperation in deep technology, defense, space exploration.
AI leadership against strategic rivals. Turning Indian professionals into political punching bags actively undermines this crucial partnership at the exact moment when we need it most.
It strains diplomatic ties that are vital for mutual strategic and economic gains.
You are alienating key global partners to achieve a domestic policy outcome that is, ironically, economically self-defeating.
So the bottom line, as articulated by the sources, is that skilled immigration isn't an act of benevolence or charity.
No, it's a calculated move of pure self-interest.
And the sources frame it brilliantly. They call it strategy masquerading as openness, competitiveness disguised as generosity.
That's the whole point. America's historical greatness didn't happen by accident. It came from its unique ability to selectively attract and integrate the world's best minds, giving them a stable, meritocratic platform to build the future.
And alienating this specific talent pool is a short-sighted retreat into fear.
Into fear, bureaucratic chaos, and political expediency, which effectively hands a massive strategic advantage directly to your competitors. The message is clear. If America forgets this lesson, other nations are more than ready to remember it for her.
All right, let's ground this structural reliance in some data, starting with the undisputed engine of U.S. innovation, Silicon Valley. The sources repeatedly call the dependency on Indian talent an open secret.
It's an open secret because the scale it's absolutely staggering, and it's pervasive. Roughly 1/3 of the entire technology workforce in Silicon Valley is of Indian origin.
A third. That's from the most junior engineer all the way up to the highest-ranking executive.
All the way up. This isn't just about a few founders. This is the core infrastructure of the place. It spans engineering, product management, key strategic roles.
So the success of leaders like Satya Nadella at Microsoft and Sundar Pichai at Google are really just symbols.
They're symbols that point to a vast, deep structural reality that sits right underneath them.
And this structural reality, it translates immediately into the capacity for economic output, right?
Yeah.
And the velocity of innovation.
Oh, absolutely. The sources highlight that since 2018, Indian Americans have co-founded a disproportionate share of U.S. unicorn startups. They are dominating the highest growth fields.
Like fintech, AI, enterprise software.
All of them. This isn't just about, diversity for diversity's sake. This is about kinetic economic power.
And the dependency becomes even more acute when you zoom in on artificial intelligence.
Which the sources identify as the current critical global competitive battlefield.
Right.
In AI, a majority of the top startups feature immigrant founders. And the leadership contribution from Indian professionals is just vastly disproportionate to their percentage of the total U.S. population.
They're less than 1% of the population.
Less than 1%. But they hold leading positions in key AI research and application areas. It's an incredible concentration of talent.
This is the context, then, for the sources introducing that very powerful and, potentially provocative concept, brown intelligence.
Right. And it's immediately clarified this is not a diversity metric.
It's a descriptive term.
It's a descriptive term for the human capital infrastructure that powers U.S. technology dominance. The term is used by the sources to emphasize that this specific, highly educated and focused talent pool from India and the Indian diaspora isn't just incidental to success.
It's fundamental to it.
It is the fundamental human capital engine that keeps the machine learning, improving, and compounding at speed. If you look at the complex systems that drive modern tech deep learning models, massive data pipelines, enterprise architecture, the people designing and maintaining them are disproportionately from this specific group.
So the conclusion is pretty stark. America's AI advantage, its position as the global leader in the next technological frontier, is fundamentally reliant on the continuous supply and smooth operation of this global talent.
Global talent operating within American institutions, that's the magic formula.
So any policy instability in the mechanisms that govern the talent flow visas, citizenship, administrative certainty, is an immediate direct risk to America's AI advantage.
It's a strategic vulnerability, a massive one. And when you consider the aggressive efforts by China, the Gulf states, and various European nations to attract this exact same talent.
Offering fast-track visas, citizenship, R&D funding.
All of it. The U.S. policy becomes not just counterproductive, but strategically reckless. We are effectively pushing our greatest competitive asset directly toward our rivals.
We often focus on tech, but the sources make a really strong case that Wall Street is just as dependent on this global brainpower. Maybe more quietly.
It's quieter, but just as deep. Modern finance is no longer about shouting on trading floors. It's all automated. It's run on data, quantitative modeling, and incredibly complex algorithms.
The days of relying on gut instinct are over.
Long gone in high finance, especially in trading, risk management, and asset allocation. These fields are driven by data science, rigorous quantitative modeling, and the maintenance of massive computational systems.
And firms like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Citadel, they depend on this talent.
They rely heavily on globally sourced analytical talent to build and refine the algorithms that give them milliseconds of competitive advantage. This quantitative core is built almost exclusively on specialized STEM expertise, and much of it is sourced from international universities and professional pools.
The sources use Goldman Sachs as a specific, powerful case study here.
They do, and it illustrates this deep structural integration. It shows that this isn't simply a matter of offshoring basic back office work.
So what did Goldman do?
Well, Goldman made a very public statement about this integration in 2025. They promoted a record number of India-based employees to the coveted managing director roles.
That's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
But more significantly, their India operations, which now employ over 8,000 people, represent the firm's largest footprint outside of New York.
8,000 people. So this isn't simple outsourcing.
It is true, critical integration. They are running essential functions from India data science, quant modeling, compliance tech, even high-frequency trading algorithm development, and it's all fully integrated into their global strategy and core business operations.
Which means the implication of disrupting that talent flow is massive. It's not just a potential hit to profits.
No, it's a systemic risk to the firm's entire quantitative bench and its overall competitive edge.
How so?
Well, if the H1B crisis were to dramatically reduce the flow of new top-tier analytical talent, it weakens the firm's ability to innovate its financial products, to manage novel risks, and to compete on speed and complexity.
And that has macroeconomic implications far beyond just Goldman Sachs.
Oh, absolutely. It impacts consulting firms, large hedge funds, and all the enterprise software that powers global financial transactions. When you disrupt the talent pipeline, you disrupt the precision of American capital markets.
And finally, the sources highlight that even in sectors that are symbolically tied to national identity and security, I mean, the hardest of hard science, the dependency on international talent is undeniable.
The aerospace industry is the perfect example, specifically Elon Musk's SpaceX.
Right.
Even in these highly sensitive national security symbolic sectors, the expertise required for massive, complex projects like Starship, Starlink, and next-generation propulsion systems is sourced globally.
We're talking about incredibly specialized knowledge here.
Things like advanced aerodynamics, novel material science, complex structural and mechanical engineering. These skills are scarce everywhere, and the U.S. is just not generating enough domestic talent to meet the ambitious demand of these exponential growth companies.
The source material is very blunt in its assessment of this.
It is. It concludes that. Rocket science, it turns out, does not respect borders.
That phrase just cuts through all the political rhetoric, doesn't it?
It does. Whether you're designing complex financial models on Wall Street or training the next generation of generative AI models in Silicon Valley, or calculating the precise propulsion needed for a Mars rocket at SpaceX.
The leadership and the critical execution rest on international expertise.
On the ability to attract, hire, and integrate that expertise seamlessly, the U.S. relies on this global magnet effect. And any policy that introduces friction or fear into that magnet is actively sabotaging its own future capacity.
It's essentially a self-imposed technical debt. You're reducing your capacity for innovation for the sake of political expediency.
It's a debt that will have to be paid in future competitive losses. The world's best minds, they follow two things: opportunity and stability. And when the U.S. starts providing neither, those minds shift their allegiance, and the intellectual capital shifts right along with them.
So this structural vulnerability that we've been talking about, it brings us to the central and I think inevitable thesis of the sources.
Which is that restrictive policy will not save domestic jobs. It will simply push work outward to jurisdictions that offer stability. The sources frame this as history just repeating itself, moving from innovation to structural inevitability.
And the mechanism here is the price signal. We talked about this before.
Right. The H1B restrictions, the massive proposed fees, the bureaucratic uncertainty, the social hostility. These are not deterrents to globalization.
No, they're the opposite.
They are essentially powerful price signals that make talent acquisition in the U.S. incredibly expensive and volatile. And that, in turn, acts as a powerful accelerator to offshoring.
Because companies are rational economic actors. They respond to risk and cost.
Always. When visas become expensive, unpredictable, and politically volatile, major corporations and startups alike, they adapt.
So what does that adaptation look like?
They freeze international travel. They quietly shift critical R&D functions and budget allocations offshore. They build what the sources call shadow teams in stable jurisdictions like Canada, the UK, or India just to mitigate risk.
And they automate.
And they aggressively automate around what they perceive as human friction caused by all this policy instability.
It's the ultimate counterintuitive polity failure. The restrictions achieve the exact opposite of their stated goal.
They do, because modern work is modular and it's mobile. If the worker cannot reliably cross the ocean to San Francisco, the work will cross the fiber optic cable to Bengaluru. The economic decision is always made in favor of efficiency and predictability.
To really understand the inevitability of this shift, we need to grasp this analogy of the Foxconn model. Foxconn succeeded because manufacturing reached a stage of modularity and standardization.
That is the key insight. Manufacturing tasks like making phones or computers could be broken down into discrete, repeatable steps. They could be optimized for efficiency, replicated across massive labor pools, and quality controlled without demanding artisanal skill at every single station.
And the argument is that knowledge work has now reached that same phase.
The exact same phase of maturity: software engineering, advanced data analysis, legal research, chip design, all of it.
And this is what they call the industrialization of intellect.
Right. And it's powered by tools. Sophisticated AI co-pilots, cloud-native infrastructure, secure collaboration platforms, standardized development frameworks like Agile and DevOps. All these things have transformed what was once artisanal, individual intellectual labor
Into something more like an assembly line.
into an assembly line of cognition. Think about what modern AI tools do. They handle the boilerplate code, the documentation, the initial quality checks. They can even coordinate complex tasks across teams.
So the work can now be decomposed into these discrete, auditable, high-throughput workflows.
Exactly. And this doesn't make human intellect less valuable. It makes intellectual labor scalable, predictable, and crucially, geographically agnostic. It allows for the creation of a vast precision-engineered platform that absorbs global demand for complex cognition and converts it into engineered output at speed.
And that platform is the Knowledge Foxconn.
That is the birth of the Knowledge Foxconn.
So, if the industrialization of cognition is inevitable and the U.S. is actively creating friction, the search for a host nation begins. Why is India not just a candidate for this Foxconn for knowledge workers, but, as the sources describe it, the default location?
Well, the foundational infrastructure is already incomparable. First, India possesses the world's largest and fastest growing STEM talent pool.
They're graduating millions of engineers annually.
Millions. And you couple that scale with a deep 5-decade history in IT services and global delivery mechanisms. Plus, the sheer scale of English fluency and the highly advantageous time zone overlap working seamlessly with both the US and Europe, it just makes it uniquely positioned.
It's an ecosystem that's already operating at a global scale.
It is. However, the sources do note that India has to overcome one key challenge to make this work.
Which is shifting its industry model.
Exactly. It traditionally evolved around a services model based on billing hours. The next phase requires a pivot to shipping outcomes.
So a ruthless focus on productization and deliverables rather than just logging time.
That pivot is absolutely essential for the Knowledge Foxconn to reach its full potential. The old model was transactional. It was, we will provide you with 10 bodies for 40 hours a week.
And the new model.
The new model has to be revolutionary. It has to be, we will deliver this fully tested, compliant API feature set for a fixed price, guaranteed on this date. That requires a massive internal shift from just managing process to being accountable for outcomes.
This brings us to the detailed architecture of what this Knowledge Foxconn would actually look like. And the sources are very clear. This is not simply more outsourcing.
No, this is a new strategic institutional form. It's designed specifically to capture high-value, complex services from the U.S. and Europe by addressing all the political and operational friction the U.S. has created.
It has to be designed for high-trust environments.
It does. A simple outsourcing center can handle the IP of an AI unicorn or the compliance needs of a major financial institution. The Knowledge Foxconn has to offer 4 key architectural elements to succeed.
Okay, let's start with the first one. Pre-assembled talent units.
These are not individual hires. This is key. They are ready to deploy cognitive assembly lines.
So they're pre-certified, pre-trained teams.
Exactly. Specialized in highly complex, high-value domains, advanced AML models, specialized fintech systems, high-level cybersecurity, biotech informatics, even aerospace and robotics software.
So a U.S. company doesn't hire one engineer. They contract for an entire optimized unit that's ready to go.
A unit capable of delivering a complex outcome immediately. This bypasses the entire friction of hiring and training.
Okay, the second pillar is maybe the most crucial for winning those high-value American contracts, compliance by design.
This is non-negotiable. This addresses the massive security and regulatory friction that currently inhibits trust. The Foxconn for Brains has to offer IP protection and have critical compliance requirements baked into the workflows from the start.
Things like SOC 2, HEPA, FINRA, FDA compliance.
All of them. And for the non-specialist listener, let's quickly unpack why this is so important. SOC 2 is crucial because it proves their operational security is robust enough for sensitive American data.
And HEPA.
HIPAA A compliance means that if a biotech or health tech startup outsources work, the Indian team is legally and procedurally compliant with U.S. patient privacy laws. FINRA is for financial data. The Knowledge Foxconn guarantees auditable processes and clear data provenance before the contract is even signed.
It's delivering trust as a product.
It is. That significantly lowers the barrier for American firms dealing with sensitive proprietary data.
All right, the third element addresses security at the physical and digital level, secure compute and data residency.
This means dedicated, often air-gapped AI labs physical facilities that are disconnected from public networks for confidential model training. It means regulatory-grade encryption and data residency guarantees.
Because many countries require that certain data stays within their borders.
Exactly. The Knowledge Foxconn can offer dedicated secure zones that meet these regulatory standards globally, making data management frictionless for the client. This is essential for defense contracts or cutting-edge, highly valuable IP.
And finally, the most disruptive economic shift, which directly addresses the policy chaos in the U.S. outcome-based pricing.
This is the revolutionary part. It decouples the cost entirely from human friction. They don't charge based on bodies or visas or hours logged.
Payment is based purely on measurable deliverables.
Pay per feature shipped, pay per model trained, pay per system validated, pay per regulatory hurdle cleared. This model transfers the risk of inefficiency and policy chaos entirely to the service provider.
Which makes the cost structure for the U.S. company totally predictable.
Completely predictable. The Foxconn lesson that America seems to have forgotten is that this abstracting of labor actually strengthened companies like Apple. It allowed them to focus on design, vision, and marketing.
And the same logic applies to knowledge work.
It creates a powerful new comparative advantage split. The U.S. should specialize in vision, capital allocation, and strategy. And India, or the Knowledge Foxconn, specializes in execution at scale, engineering depth, and continuous iteration.
This is pure comparative advantage in action.
It is. It enables both sides to scale faster by focusing on their respective strengths, without being slowed down by administrative friction.
And the ultimate inevitability factor here, linking back to our AI discussion, is AI itself. It collapses distance.
Absolutely. With autonomous AI agents handling the coordination, the documentation, the compliance aspects, and even the initial code writing, geography matters less and less.
So a highly instrumented team in Bengaluru could outperform a fragmented one in San Francisco.
A highly instrumented compliance by design team in Bengaluru or Hyderabad can simply outperform a fragmented, visa-anxious team in San Francisco. And the irony remains the central theme of this section. Anti-immigrant politics accelerate the very offshoring they claim to oppose. They are building the economic logic for their rivals to succeed.
So the economic inevitability we've just discussed, this Knowledge Foxconn model, it leads directly to the next and I think even more radical concept in the sources.
The idea that instead of simply waiting to host the work, India should proactively seize the initiative.
By creating a 10-square-mile accelerator city. This is a vision of a purpose-built, high-velocity innovation hub designed to rival the world's most successful tech clusters.
This is India making a bold strategic bet, and the core philosophy behind it is brilliant. If borders and bureaucracy are throttling global talent flow and creating friction in the U.S., why not?
Bring the world to India instead of sending Indians to the world.
Exactly. The goal isn't just to host the work, the execution, it's to capture the core IP, the early-stage innovation, and the economic value that traditionally left the country when founders emigrated.
The ultimate goal is keeping the brain at home.
It is. And this wouldn't be a typical economic zone. This is a special economic zone designed not merely for commerce, but specifically for global innovation leadership.
Architected from scratch to host the world's top tech startups, founders, and investors, regardless of their origin.
It's a completely clean slate approach. They're designing a city from first principles to optimize for speed, for certainty, and for global capital attraction. It leverages India's scale, but it mitigates the bureaucratic friction that can sometimes characterize the rest of the nation.
It's creating a highly concentrated, hyper-efficient magnet.
That's the idea. And the sources provide a really detailed blueprint for what this accelerator state would look like. It's essentially recreating the best conditions of Silicon Valley or Singapore, but with guaranteed scale and regulatory certainty.
So we need to break this down into the critical pillars of its design. Let's start with the first one, which addresses the primary U.S. failing: regulatory speed and ease.
This is all about eliminating friction for the founder. The sources propose mandatory one-page company registration within 24 hours.
24 hours.
Alongside pre-approved multi-year visas for key personnel, founders, and international investors. So no 2027 delays here.
And the focus on IP is massive. They propose automatic, streamlined IP registration and protection.
And simplified compliance frameworks specifically tailored for complex sectors like biotech, AI, and aerospace startups. You're offering founders a guarantee of speed and protection from day one.
Okay, the second pillar is fiscal incentives. designed to instantly attract global capital.
And this isn't just a minor tax break. They propose a generous 10-year corporate tax holiday for qualified, high-growth tech startups.
A decade with no corporate tax.
And it's paired with massive R&D incentives and substantial grants specifically earmarked for deep tech experimentation AI, quantum computing, new materials.
Why is that 10-year tax holiday so necessary? Why not just 5?
It's about signaling absolute commitment. It eliminates the tax incentive for founders to incorporate offshore in, say, Singapore or Dubai. Singapore already offers fantastic regulatory clarity, but India's proposal offers a decade of near-zero operational tax in a market that also offers unparalleled scale.
It's a magnet designed to pull companies away from established high-tax jurisdiction.
It is. You're signaling to VCs that this is where future-defining work belongs, and the ROI will be maximized here.
The third pillar goes beyond policy. World-class infrastructure. This has to be state-of-the-art.
It has to be. We're talking high-speed transport networks, smart grid utilities, high-quality residential complexes, and international schools.
The things you need to attract and retain global families.
And crucially, specialized tech facilities, massive data centers, air-gapped AI labs, and co-working ecosystems tailored specifically to the needs of deep tech development. If you build it for global leaders, they will come.
And the fourth pillar is essential for network effects. Developing a genuine global talent ecosystem.
This means integrating the physical infrastructure with the human network. It includes specialized housing for international founders, robust mentorship networks connecting the accelerator cities seamlessly to establish global hubs, Silicon Valley, Tel Aviv, London.
The goal is to build that physical proximity that drives exponential knowledge spillovers.
Yes. And the final pillar, a massive point of differentiation that addresses investor political risk. Legal and governance innovation.
This is
It is. The city would feature on-site arbitration courts operating under globally recognized standards for international trade and IP disputes. This makes foreign investors feel secure.
And what about governance?
The sources propose transparent governance, possibly even using blockchain-backed processes for public records and accountability. This dramatically reduces the perceived political and bureaucratic risk that is often associated with large emerging economies.
It's a guarantee of clean, fast, and transparent government service inside that zone.
It is, and the strategic benefits for India enacting the system are immediate and enormous. First, it ensures talent retention. It lets India's brightest minds work on world-class projects domestically, drastically reducing the incentive to emigrate.
And that talent retention then acts as a powerful magnet for capital attraction. VCs and corporate innovation arms will naturally flock to a concentrated hub where high-quality talent and regulatory certainty are guaranteed.
And that physical proximity drives ecosystem deepening. When brilliant people are working close together, the network effects, the mentorship, the knowledge spillovers, the unexpected collaborations, they accelerate growth exponentially.
Which ultimately allows India to compete globally as a destination of choice for founders worldwide. It insulates its economic fate from unstable U.S. policy shifts.
And we have historical parallels that show this isn't just a theory.
Right. The sources cite 3 key examples.
First, Shenzhen. It went from a small fishing village to the hardware manufacturing and tech powerhouse of the world in 40 years.
Through focused policy, infrastructure, and talent concentration.
Then you have Singapore, which used absolute regulatory clarity, tax incentives, and rule of law guarantees to attract massive amounts of foreign capital.
And third, Dubai Internet City,
Which created a regional tech hub by focusing specifically on easy entry and tax breaks for international tech firms.
The difference for India, though, as the sources emphasize, is scale and market size.
Exactly. India has the demographic weight and the existing talent pool to make this a potential leapfrog opportunity. They could create an innovation-first urban ecosystem that could eventually surpass fragmented city clusters elsewhere.
So the efficiency of Singapore combined with the scale of China.
That's the ambition. And this entire complex strategy revolves around that counterintuitive policy goal of importing work, not exporting people. This reverses a decades-long historical trend.
For generations, India has exported its best talent and imported remittances.
But that approach sacrificed long-term foundational prosperity. When your talent leaves and builds a billion-dollar AI company in Palo Alto, India loses the IP ownership, the high-value jobs, the economic leverage, the ecosystem depth.
The country is essentially outsourcing its future prosperity to the nations that successfully attract that talent.
The brain-at-home strategy flips this completely. It ensures that the highest-paying, most cutting-edge jobs remain domestic, and that the patents, the proprietary models, and the valuable algorithms are developed and owned locally.
Which generates sovereign IP and massive economic leverage.
It does. And for this radical re-architecture to work, the sources stress that India has to act as a strategic architect, not just a passive recipient.
It has to radically simplify law, create easy entry corridors for foreign collaborators.
And incentivize that outcome-based productivity we discussed in the Knowledge Foxconn section. The core logic ties right back to the U.S. crisis. When the U.S. imposes friction through H1B instability, companies and entrepreneurs seek frictionless environments.
And the accelerator city is designed to be the ultimate frictionless environment.
Leveraging geopolitical turbulence as a technological advantage, the sources summarize it perfectly. Talent doesn't cross oceans out of obligation. It moves toward opportunity. India can make that opportunity home. It's a competitive market for the world's best minds, and India is creating a product designed to win that market.
Okay, so let's synthesize the findings from these first sections. Restrictive U.S. policies are not a defense of American workers. They are, in fact, creating a slow-motion brain drain.
A brain drain that's threatening to have the inflow of the very international talent that built the innovation economy in the first place.
So the U.S. is facing a potential long-term loss of competitive edge based on really a misunderstanding of how modern innovation even works.
It's policy based on a fundamental economic fallacy, that job myth we talked about. The data shows that restricting immigration based on this fallacy actively sabotages the very innovation ecosystem that creates the highest value, specialized jobs in the first place.
You're killing the economic multiplier effect in the name of protectionism.
Precisely, and the sources provide some incredibly stark historical parallels. They paint them as cautionary tales for the U.S.
And the conclusion from these precedents is pretty non-negotiable, isn't it? Talent relocates. It doesn't just disappear.
It never disappears.
Blah.
We can look at two specific, powerful historical examples that really illustrate the severity of this kind of self-inflicted wound.
Let's start with the first one.
Nazi Germany in the 1930s and 40s. The regime, driven by racial and political ideology, expelled its best minds, physicists, mathematicians, intellectuals, artists, and the U.S. was the primary beneficiary.
We gained figures who helped define modern physics, computing, defense capabilities.
Especially during World War II. And what did Europe lose?
Decades of innovation leadership.
Exactly. The expulsion wasn't just a moral failure, it was an economic and strategic catastrophe that hampered European scientific progress for decades. The talent simply moved across the ocean, and it accelerated the dominance of the receiving nation.
The second example is closer to the current geopolitical dynamic, the Soviet brain drain.
Right. From the 1970s through the 90s, the Soviet Union invested heavily in education. They produced vast numbers of highly skilled engineers and physicists.
But due to ideological rigidity and a lack of economic opportunity,
many of those professionals emigrated, particularly to Israel and the U.S., and the sources argue that this immigration accelerated U.S. technical dominance during the Cold War,
while simultaneously weakening the Soviet Union's capacity for innovation.
In critical fields like microelectronics and computer science, it accelerated their economic and technological stagnation.
So the conclusion is pretty clear. The U.S. is currently creating the domestic political conditions, the friction, instability, and fear that characterize the technological weakening of the Soviet Union.
It is creating the conditions for its own Soviet-style technological weakening. The talent doesn't vanish, it simply relocates to where it's valued and where opportunity is stable.
And when the world's best minds are alienated or forced to flee instability, innovation slows.
And competitive edge is inevitably ceded. The current crisis suggests the U.S. is forgetting that the talent it seeks to protect itself from is the very source of its global prosperity.
So let's detail the long-term tangible losses the U.S. risks right now. This brain drain isn't just an abstract concern.
No, it translates directly into economic loss. It means fewer new startups being founded in the U.S.
Which means slower AI and fintech breakthroughs.
It means reduced capital efficiency because you can't hire the specialized talent you need to scale quickly. And crucially, it means your competitors are seizing strategic leadership in emerging technologies.
So when the best minds are building the next quantum computing firm in Toronto or the next generative AI model in that accelerator city,
the U.S. risks becoming a follower, not a leader. And the most profound tragedy here is the irony.
The policies intended to defend American workers are undermining the very industries that generate the highest value jobs and the greatest economic returns for the country.
It's an economic absurdity. The prosperity of America has always relied on its ability to attract, integrate, and leverage global talent at the frontier of innovation.
And to undo that advantage out of fear or political expediency, as the sources put it.
Is economically and strategically poisonous in the long term. This is not how a global power maintains its competitive edge.
So what strategic conclusion does the source material suggest as the only viable path forward for the U.S. to mitigate this decline?
Well, the U.S. needs to recognize reality and pivot immediately to what they call strategic inclusion. That means maintaining robust, certain visa pathways for high-demand skills.
Streamlining the immigration processes to radically reduce that administrative uncertainty.
Eliminate the 2027 backlog. And actively encourage collaboration between domestic and international talent. Otherwise, the slow-motion brain drain will only accelerate.
And that ensures that America becomes the consumer, rather than the architect, of the next layer of the global economy.
Empires, the sources remind us, do not fall when they are invaded. They fall when they expel or alienate their best and brightest minds.
Okay, this is where we make the pivot. This is where we connect the brutal, complex geopolitics of the H1B crisis to something profoundly deeper.
We're transitioning from hard economic strategy, who controls the IP, to ancient philosophy and theology.
And linking that global push for optimization back to a vision that's thousands of years old. It's a massive conceptual leap, but the sources insist it's the ultimate context for all of this.
It is the ultimate context, and it requires us to step back from the immediate noise. The source material introduces the vision from Jewish tradition, drawing specifically on the book of Isaiah's prophecy.
And what is that prophecy?
It speaks of a future where a Messiah figure brings universal justice, lasting peace, and unprecedented prosperity to the entire earth. This is the age of abundance.
A world where human potential is fully realized.
And societies flourish because the fundamental problems of scarcity, inequality, and suffering have been radically overcome. It's a powerful idea.
That the highest human aspirations, global justice and plenty, are not utopian inventions of the modern era.
But rather a core, consistent, ancient prophetic vision that has informed civilizations for millennia. And that consistency is key. The vision isn't just about spiritual enlightenment.
It's intensely physical and economic.
Very much so. Isaiah speaks of swords being beaten to plowshares, a reallocation of resources from conflict to productive labor. It implies a technological and societal capacity that makes global, sustained scarcity obsolete.
And what's truly remarkable is how this ancient vision resonates so powerfully in modern Silicon Valley.
It does. Many leading tech thinkers and entrepreneurs, who are often entirely agnostic or atheist, use identical language to describe the societal outcome they're aiming for with their technologies.
So for them, the Messiah isn't a person.
No. For this influential group of technologists, the Messiah is a technological and societal tipping point. They believe that advanced systems, AI, robotics, bioengineering, clean energy, decentralized systems, they believe these possess the power to deliver abundance and opportunity to billions on a scale that was previously unimaginable.
So they are building the mechanism for the prophecy.
Precisely. They see AI-driven automation and robotics as eliminating the need for onerous, repetitive labor, freeing up human capital. They see renewable energy as eliminating the resource scarcity that currently drives geopolitical conflict.
They view life extension technologies as solving the ultimate scarce time.
Exactly. These are not just tools to them. They are framed as instruments for a radical societal transformation. And it directly echoes Isaiah's vision of a world where structural scarcity is drastically reduced.
The convergence is profound.
It is. Ancient texts provided the moral and aspirational framework, universal justice and plenty. Modern technology provides the mechanisms and the means to achieve it.
The sources then take a really radical dive into theological ground. They argue that in our age, which is so obsessed with texts and rules, we risk missing a core truth.
That scripture is not bigger than God.
What does that mean, exactly?
It means the purpose of the sacred text is only to point the way toward encounter. The source material argues that sacred texts are vital maps, but if we confuse the map for the destination, we're committing a fundamental error.
When God appears, the texts are meant to become guides, not rulers.
That's the idea. And the source material uses the Lord's Prayer as a powerful example of this focus on the immediate, active divine. It notes that it is a petition for Yahweh, whom Hindus call Vishnu, to manifest on earth and establish divine kingship. This interpretation strips away all the denominational boundaries.
And it asserts that the deepest longing of humanity across major traditions is for the living God to step into history in human form.
It's the concept of the incarnate divine, actively pursuing transformation on earth. And this leads to the audacious unifying assertion that God is here, active and accessible, not merely waiting in pages or in some distant prophecy.
This is where different traditions are seen to collide and converge into a single reality.
Exactly. The source argues that different traditions are simply describing the same ultimate reality stepping into human history. Jews are waiting for the Messiah. Christians believe that Messiah is Yahweh incarnate. Hindus are awaiting Vishnu's avatar.
The convergence point is the assertion that one ultimate reality is stepping into human history.
And the true test of faith, the source argues, is encounter a direct personal experience, not rigid adherence to doctrines or establishing interfaith hierarchies.
The implication is profound for the nature of religion itself. The pattern defined is, Scripture points, God manifests, follow the living word.
It implies a radical flexibility of faith. When God appears, the texts step aside, and what remains is the immediate, direct encounter. It shifts faith from mere memorization and doctrinal debate to actively following the divine in human form.
Which, ironically, aligns with the transformation sought by the technologist.
That's the convergence.
Okay, let's now bring the two massive themes of this deep dive together. Let's bridge that chasm between the $100,000 visa fee and the age of abundance.
So the geopolitical crisis, the H1B turbulence, is forcing a strategic repositioning of human capital globally. Nations are having to ruthlessly optimize their governance and infrastructure to capture talent and IP.
And the philosophical context suggests that this very movement toward global optimization and value creation is perhaps inadvertently leading humanity toward a state of being that religious texts have always prophesied.
The age of abundance, characterized by shared prosperity and reduced scarcity. The economic path, driven by fierce competition, leads toward the prophetic outcome, enabled by technology.
So, we arrive at the ultimate question of ownership and control, which ties back directly to that Foxconn model.
Absolutely. The sources conclude that the ultimate question is not if this age of technological abundance will arrive. The trajectory seems clear, it's powered by AI, but who will own the intellectual property and control the infrastructure that builds it?
The economic and philosophical stakes are inextricably linked.
They are. The current H1B crisis and the resulting strategic bets on the knowledge Foxconn and the accelerator city are forcing nations to make immediate strategic choices about who captures that ultimate capital.
The IP and the control over the age of abundance.
And if the U.S. continues to create friction, pushing its talent outward, it risks becoming a mere consumer of technologies that are developed and owned elsewhere.
It risks being the customer, rather than the architect, of the very age of abundance. Its own policy failures are accelerating.
The race is on. And the nations that offer the most frictionless environment for innovation, the greatest opportunity and certainty, will be the ones that own the future.
This deep dive has spanned a breathtaking scope. I mean, from a single proposed $100,000 visa fee and the pain of families caught in bureaucratic limbo, all the way to the age of abundance and the philosophical nature of the divine.
It's a massive scope, but it's driven entirely by the connections found within the source material.
It really is.
And the critical lesson for you, the learner, is that in a world of mobile intelligence and rapidly industrializing cognition, restrictive, fearful policies may feel protective in the short term, but they accelerate structural, inevitable global shifts in technology and capital flow.
Talent always moves toward opportunity and certainty.
Always. If the U.S. creates friction, the world is currently building new, frictionless infrastructure, the knowledge Foxconn and the accelerator city, to capture that talent and, with it, the future.
The sources argue that if the U.S. continues to alienate its best minds and sabotage its own innovation ecosystem, other nations will happily step in and capture the ultimate value of the age of abundance.
So the final provocative thought for you to consider is this. When the technology arrives to solve scarcity, and that technology has been engineered, designed, and optimized outside of traditional American borders due to policy chaos, will America be the consumer of the next layer of the global economy or its architect?
Keep watching the news for the specific signs of these new institutional forms.
The specialized, compliant, outcome-based knowledge Foxconn centers and the ambitious 10-square-mile accelerator cities. They're emerging as the inevitable consequences of today's strategic policy failures. The race is on to build the future, and talent is the only currency that ultimately matters.